Imagine for a moment you are immortal and not the head in a jar or mind uploaded to the cloud tower. You, as you are, immortal. You're living a life of luxury and indulgence, as is your right, being an immortal. You don't have a care in the world, for you have made it to the top. You have reached the ultimate high, and you only have forever to enjoy it. Only, don't pay too much attention to what is going on below, for being on top, by definition, means that someone else has to be at the bottom. And if you look too closely at what is going on beneath you, it just might spoil your appetite. Hi YouTube, welcome to part 3 of the series on immortality. Today we finish off the series by looking at what our world might look like if we humans discover how to become immortal. Check out part 1 and 2 of the series if you haven't done so yet. Now let's get into the video. First off, in a world where every nation, every company, and to some degree every person is in constant competition with one another to be the first to make that new discovery, the first to take that small step beyond where we've been before, we have to wonder who will make the immortality breakthrough. And secondly, will they even share the fact with the rest of the world? You can imagine that such a discovery might be worth keeping to yourself, such that no one else gains any advantage from it. Of course, at some point being immortal won't go unnoticed, unless you go the faceless route. But even then, for how long can such a secret remain quiet? At some point, someone will spill the beans and the secret will be out. Can you imagine what competing world powers would be willing to do to get their hands on the secret to immortality? Most probably anything. Very possibly, it would be the spark that ignites another world war. Sound pessimistic? Maybe. Then again, wars have been started over much less than the actual key to eternal life itself. But what if we're wrong? Let's assume the alternative for a moment. Assume that immortality is discovered and by some miracle the knowledge is shared willingly. Now let's not be naive. Willingly doesn't mean for free. Can you imagine the price tag on it? We're not talking about buying a Bugatti Veyron here, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about everlasting life. So, who will be able to afford immortality? Will the divide between rich and poor simply become the divide between immortal and mortal? You see, while some would live an everlasting life of luxury, others would have to keep the gears turning, and it would be the average citizen that can't afford immortality that would do this job. How long before resentment sets in and the divide between the downtrodden and the high and mighty reaches breaking point? And what would law enforcement look like in this scenario? How far would the immortals be willing to go to protect their higher-than-thee lifestyles? Let's take another angle at this. Consider you are the one lucky enough to afford immortality. While the picture we painted in the intro of this video may seem like the life we all dream of, and it's not without good reason, you have to wonder for how long it will be gratifying. You see, in a way, life is like a party. It's exciting because there is a beginning and an end to it. It is the fact that there exists a limit to everything we do and experience that heightens the value of whatever you are doing or experiencing in that time. How long before the fun stuff just becomes normal, bland, or even boring? What would be the psychological effect of such a life? When does the carefree life of unending comfort just become a life of boredom where nothing is able to generate anything remotely new and fun or exciting? You see, these are all things we humans have to experience. We need new experiences in order to have a reason to keep on going. to live a fulfilling life. So, ultimately, at what point does immortality become a curse rather than a blessing?
I'm old, Gandalf. I know I don't look it, but I'm beginning to feel it in my heart. I feel thin.
And this opens up a door to a whole world of unpleasant thoughts. Because what lengths will the bored out of their minds immortals go to get that thrill they're seeking? Any thrill, just something that they have not felt or experienced before. It may sound like we are describing something out of the Hunger Games, but that's because we simply cannot put it past us. Humanity has proven that it is capable of very unkosher acts. Suddenly, Squid Game doesn't seem unrealistic. Only, in this version, the ultimate prize might be immortality. One more life that stays on much longer than it should and strain the system. But a decent culling takes place in the process, so it's all good, right? And participation is voluntary, so what's the problem, right? Well, if you're like us, all of this makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. Phew, that got a bit heavy really quick. Just a quick thank you for watching this far and also for continuing to support us. We really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing, liking and sharing our videos with others. It really helps us grow this channel. Thanks. For the next section of this video, we would like to consider a scenario where immortality somehow becomes universally available. And even though what we discussed before regarding life becoming dull and uneventful would also be relevant in this scenario, we cannot think of a more significant or high impacting factor that would come into play than the inevitable population control that would have to be imposed. What would be the maximum number of people sustainable on Earth? And remember, these are people that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. How many of us could stay on at any given time? And who decides how many is okay? Eventually, the world would be full of old people, regardless of what appearances may be. We would be old within ourselves. How long could we go without any significant new perspective? New and fresh minds looking at our world from a different angle. We would stagnate. And what would happen if you were to have a child in an already strained system? What would the consequences be? Can you picture it? A world where the worst crime would be to bring another life into existence. The biggest miracle we have, suddenly a crime. Would you have to choose which life is to carry on and the other? Would there be people whose job it is to monitor society and make sure there are no unauthorized births? Would we be able to live and thrive under such constant scrutiny? And would we be able to give up the wonder of parenthood and having children? We're sure that in the end, pretty much everyone would come to the same conclusion, that humans were never meant to live forever. We're not made for it. If there is no out with the old, then there can be no in with the new. However, the problem is that we are also inherently selfish creatures. It would probably take most people a long time to admit that life can only truly flourish when it runs in a cycle. But even still, the temptation would always be there, and most would grab the opportunity when presented with it. It is only natural to want to survive. But at some point, once the realization sets in that life has to end for each and every one of us, eventually, death will become a choosing. In fact, we might call it a blessing. And can you imagine a world where, for the greater part, the passing on of humans would come at a chosen time? What effect would that have on us and those closest to us? To have to endure these events where people would no longer fear and avoid death, but rather choose and embrace it willingly. There simply is no way to predict how the human psyche would react to a world like this. Then again, being what we are, adaptive, resourceful, generally intelligent and full of the will to survive, we would most probably be okay. We would find a way to live on, and what may seem strange now would just become the new normal, like with so many other things that have gone before. Which means that the real question we have to ask ourselves is not whether immortality can be achieved and whether we can make such a world function, but rather whether it is something that humanity should achieve. We'll leave you to decide that one for yourselves. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, cheers.